What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the CRW podcast here for episode 226 as we take a look back on a disappointing performance from West Virginia, unfortunately, in game two of the 2025 season as they fall on the road to the Ohio Bobcats 17-10. And I know you've probably heard a lot of people talk about this game already, and don't want to talk about it too extensively because I feel like I'm just going to rehash the same things that everyone else has kind of stated in regards to this game and to the negative points. And I think, unfortunately, at this point, well, we can say 2 games in right now with some extenuating circumstances affecting things is we probably need to tamper our expectations a little bit for the remainder of year one here in the Rich Rod 2.0 era, unfortunately. And for me, there's a lot of reasons you can really look to from Saturday, particularly on the offensive side, and point to as reasons to say that. But I think there's two main reasons. And the first one, and I kind of want to go over this right at the beginning of the episode, is that Jaheim White going down with an injury was absolutely heartbreaking for me. You guys know that followed the Country Roads Webcast for a long time, the YouTube channel here, the podcast, of course, since 2018. When Jaheim White committed, I was really excited about him. I covered him the entire time. The signing day special I do on the channel. He was kind of my favorite player since then. I remember putting out a video, 4 months before the season, his true freshman year, talking about has West Virginia found another true freshman phenom, and of course he exploded onto the scene that season has been great ever since. And I was so excited. You guys heard me rave all off season about him getting to play in a Rich Rod offense, how that was such a perfect marriage for him and for this offense. And really just heartbreaking to see what happened there. And if you ever wonder why the horse collar penalty is a penalty, that's exactly why right there. And, it really frustrates me too. I don't know the young man's name from Ohio, but man, horse collar's been a penalty for what, a decade plus now? And these guys know that. They know if they stick their hand in their jersey, they're going to get a penalty. So, I don't want to say it was with intent, but man, it's hard to do that on accident, especially as bad as that tackle was. A face mask involved as well, roll tackle, and then, of course, the horse collar. So, all in all, regardless of intent or not, it results in West Virginia losing their best player, who was really going to be kind of the explosive part of this offense. They flashed a trio on the screen prior to the game of West Virginia's big three, they were calling it for the game, and it was Nico Marchiol, Jaheim White, and Cam Vaughn. And you're definitely without one of those. It looks like, at least for this upcoming week, I'd say we'll see. What the reports are coming out. Did not look good. We don't want to speculate on the injury or how long it could be, but it did not look good. I think we would all agree on that aspect. So we're going to be without Jaheim. Quarterback's a whole other issue we'll get to in a minute. I think Nico will still be the guy this week, potentially. We'll see, though. And, of course, Cam Vaughn is definitely your main guy now on offense. You're going to have to definitely draw up some interesting stuff for him, maybe move him around in some formations and stuff and try and get the ball into his hands as you lose a lot of explosiveness without Jaheim. So that's one reason we need to temper expectations. And another reason, unfortunately, the offensive line, it's bad right now. Now, can it improve throughout the season? I think so. Because I think we do have some guys that are individually talented. But the thing about offensive line is it's really extremely chemistry based. And when you bring in all guys that have never played together before and ask them to go out and do it, right away, it's going to take some time for them to find that chemistry, for them to find that cohesion, for them to figure out how they work off of one another. And, if the chemistry isn't there and one piece of that puzzle is off, you can have 4 guys doing the right thing and one guy doing the wrong thing, and it's blown up. And the offensive line was really, really bad. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. You can't sugarcoat it. That's one of the worst offensive line performances I've seen. And, we were a little bit worried. We kind of mentioned it, going into the game, and we definitely mentioned it after the Robert Morris game, that it seemed like we weren't really getting pushed against Robert Morris. And then I think this game, you saw that come to fruition in a big, bad way. Against the MAC school, West Virginia was not getting any push. And there was a few plays where it stood out to me. There was a 3rd and 2, I think it was. West Virginia tried to run up the middle, got stuffed. I think it was a series or two later. There was the 2nd and 3. They tried to run up the middle, got absolutely stuffed. And from then on, you saw the coaching staff doesn't trust this offensive line to be able to get the short yardage plays they need, because there was 2 different short yardage plays, I think on 3rd downs. I want to say about 3rd and 2 were each of them. One of them we tried to run a toss to the outside because we didn't trust us to hold up in the interior and get the push we needed to get the yardage. That shows that. And then also on another 3rd and 2, they didn't even try and run the ball at all. They tried to scramble or do a little rollout concept and get Nico out on the perimeter and let him throw the ball. And I think you can see the issue with the offensive line showing up not only in what we're doing with the short yardage stuff there, but also in the play calling on the offensive side when it comes to, we're using a lot of quick game stuff in our passing game because we don't feel like our offensive line can hold up long enough for us to do any long developing pass concepts. And it sucks because we do have some deep threats on this team, I feel like, with Cam Vaughn that we for sure know of. Justin Smith Brown's another fast guy. We got speedy guys on this team, but we don't have a chance to take the top off because we can't hold up long enough in pass pro to be able to get the ball out and have some long distance pass plays. So that's why you're seeing, quarterback rollouts, moving the launch point. That's why you're seeing quick game stuff, hitches, screens, drags. I know we want to attack downfield at points, but the offensive line's kind of an issue that's not allowing us to do that. And it's really, not only hurting us there, but of course it's really hurting our run game. When we get to the stats here in a minute, we'll take a look at that and you can see it with your own eyes. A really bad run performance, and especially once Jaheim White went out. And that's the other big question mark that leads to, another reason we need to tamper our expectations. So, the question is, should we hit the panic button? No, we should not hit the panic button. Rich Rod's teams have always improved throughout the season. I believe this team will as well. I believe they'll find a way to do some things that'll be successful on offense moving forward. And I really do like what we have on the defensive side with Zach Alley. Were tackles an issue in this game much more than they were in the first game? Yeah, I think West Virginia missed 18 tackles as opposed to 4 in game one. But I really love the halftime adjustments they made. The goal is always to force 3 turnovers. They forced 3 turnovers in the second half. The only bad part of it was West Virginia did absolutely nothing with him on offense. You hold a team to 17 points, you got a chance to win a lot of those games, and West Virginia had plenty of opportunities to win this one, and the defense did their part in the second half, not giving up any points and, forcing 3 turnovers. And I think Zach Alley's been as advertised through 2 games, but the competition's only going to get stiffer, and he's only going to have to be, that much better because of this offense's struggles. The defense is going to have to carry us, especially early on here for, another couple games or so until maybe this offense finds its footing. Maybe they make some changes. I don't know at which positions necessarily, but maybe some different guys on the offensive line until they find a cohesive 5. Maybe they make some different packages at quarterback. We'll have to see what we do at running back. Also at receiver, Jaden Bray went down. At linebacker, Reed Carrico went down. So unfortunately, not only do you come out of this with a loss, but you come out of this with some injury troubles as well. Jaheim being at the forefront of those, but you have some other starters that went down in the game as well that we'll have to have updates on this upcoming week. So I think all of those things definitely lead us to tempering our expectations for the rest of the season when I talk about this game in hindsight now. And I think another one of those is running back, because without Jaheim, you lose a lot of your explosiveness. Clay Ash, what a hard worker, what a guy to work his way up from a walk-on to earning a scholarship to really being involved with this team now in the first year of the Rich Rod 2.0 era. But in my opinion, I don't know if you can trot him out as the starting running back in the brawl and the starting running back moving forward in the season if you don't have Jaheim. I think that maybe this is the week they really push hard to get Ty Edwards acclimated so he can really contribute and play. I love Sincere Bowers and his explosiveness. You need somebody that can give you some explosiveness, especially if you're not going to have it from the run game at the quarterback position. We know Nico, not the fastest, right? So I think, Sincere Bowers would be a great option, but I don't know if he just doesn't have full grasp of the offense yet, because it doesn't seem like they trusted him a lot. Even after Jaheim went down, he only came in for the 1 series and got, or maybe 2 series, but only got 1 carry on the game there. And that was that 3rd and short that got blown up, or it was the 2nd and 3 that got blown up, one of the 2, can't remember which. So, I'd love to see more Sincere Bowers. Cannon Katzer is the one that I'm really keeping an eye on to see if he gets healthy. Finally, he's been injured. We haven't seen him yet this season, but he was talked about some in the offseason. Even, when Rich Rod did his conversation with Phil Steele, we mentioned Cannon Katzer coming from D2, where he won a national title there and was their main back. So maybe if he gets healthy, maybe he's a guy that, starts and gets some carries. But I'm going to be interested to see who the starting running back is, moving forward, coming out of this game. And, depending on how that goes, maybe something else that needs to temper our expectations moving forward. So unfortunately for me, that's kind of the theme coming out of this one, is tempering my expectations a little bit just for now. Like I said, I think that, of course, I'm always optimistic. We always put the gold and blue glasses on here at the CRW, as we like to say, maybe a little bit too much going through this offseason. I think the offensive line was a bit more of an issue than I thought that it would be, just to be quite honest with you, because I think we do have some talented guys there. I just don't know if they're just not meshing well. Whatever the issue is there, offensive line is a big problem right now. And that's really, you can argue between that and quarterback is the most important thing on an offense. To me, it's the offensive line. Everything goes as that goes. And, we can have the best skill players in the world, but if our offensive line isn't doing what it needs to do, it's going to be a rough day at the office in a lot of games moving forward, unfortunately. So those are things we're keeping an eye on. I didn't want to rehash everything everyone else has said too much, so I just kind of wanted to hit on those main points that I know a lot of people have also probably talked about, but those are the standout things coming out of this game, man. But I do love that we have a defense that forces some turnovers. That's big to see. And like I said, I do have faith in Zach Alley. Hopefully that defense can carry us and keep us in some games to where our offense can just do enough and score, on a couple drives there. Because that's all we really needed in the second half, right? Was one drive. And I think we had it on that Cam Vaughn ball near the goal line. To me, that looked like a catch. Whatever, it's called what it was. Had plenty of other opportunities we didn't cash in on. But to me, that was a catch. We should have had first and goal, and maybe that was the one that could have tied it up. But positives coming out of this. We do have a team that keeps fighting all the way to the very end there, even the last drive with no timeouts. Still felt like we had a chance, and that's a change from the previous regime. As bad as we played, we only lost by 7. I know it feels terrible, but it was only a 7-point loss. So let's just hope we can bounce back from that. And hey, if we all as fans can see these weak points, these negative points, the staff does as well. So let's hope they get that corrected moving forward here on the season, just as positives to look forward to. Just try and come away with the silver lining from what was a very negative day, not only because of the loss, but also because of the loss of personnel that we have to keep an eye on. We'll see the injury status of Jaden Bray, Reed Carrico, Jaheim White moving forward on the season. So before we put a bow on this game by looking at the stats, I did put out a question here on social media because, as I said, don't want to speculate on how long Jaheim White will be out, but I think I'd be surprised if he played in the backyard brawl, right? And quarterback's a whole other issue. Nico did not play great, and I think without Jaheim and with a bad offensive line, you probably need some more mobility at the quarterback spot. And I think a lot of other people were feeling that way, and you saw it going around social media, which led me to ask a question here to feature on the show. Who should start at quarterback in the brawl? Who should start at running back is what I put out on social media. Got some responses here from some people. The Cold Country Podcast, be sure to check out their show as well. Ask, does it matter? And I think, of course, there's some comedy involved with that question, but it's a legitimate question with how bad the offensive line looked. It may not matter. And I'll give my thoughts on here after I hit on some of these comments. And that kind of leads into some of my thoughts is the offensive line is what worries me about being able to pick out the guy that's probably the best right now, which I'll get to momentarily. But the Vision says, we're done, Mountaineer Nation. Drink your moonshine. It's going to be a bad season. I'm so sad. Unfortunately, I think we were all feeling that way following the game. Definitely a worse season than we expected, especially if we're out Jaheim, which prayers out to Jaheim, man. He's been such a good guy, friend of the show, and hated to see that, man. Hated to see that, and hopefully minor setback for a major comeback. Ryan Mathena, shout out to Ryan, says, not sure. We probably need a more mobile QB as bad as the O-line is. Henderson doesn't look to have an impressive arm. Wouldn't mind seeing Scotty Fox. I think he's one of those dudes who's just a baller. Thanks, Ryan. Trey Edwards says, give Nico the start. We'll see how he does. Looks for Henderson to play a lot more in this upcoming brawl as well. Bowards or Hubbard needs to be the starter for running back. And for the love of God, where's Ty Edwards? Yeah, Ty Edwards was at least there and dressed. Tyler Jacklich was there and dressed. Dior Hubbard was not there. I don't know what's going on with that situation because it was like he was the number 2 running back coming out of the spring, and then he's not even traveling with the team now. Seems to be buried on the depth chart. Of course, Cannon Katzer didn't travel because of injury. Andre Devine didn't travel. So you had Sincere Bowers there. You had Clay Ash, Ty Edwards, and Jaheim White there as far as running backs were concerned. So I would expect more Ty Edwards this week. Maybe more Sincere Bowers. We'll see if Cannon Katzer's healthy enough. If so, we're going to see some of him. I don't know what's up with Dior Hubbard, though, but seems like we will see a dose of Clay Ash also. We'll just have to see who trots out there first and who gets the hot hand. I think that's what you end up going with in this game. Mountaineers headline says, I honestly don't think it matters. We're going to get destroyed. I love Mountaineers headline, man, but I hate that he's feeling that way. But it's hard not to feel that way coming out of after this game, unfortunately. But a lot of people are feeling like, does it even matter? And that's a bad feeling to have. Hey, how about our co-host Brad here, coming in with a little funny contribution as himself, man. My man's always quick to hit you with the joke here. Line Nico up as running back with Scotty or Jalen as quarterback. Mountaineer Messiah said, O-line, big concern, but does Rishrod really think Ash should be above Bowers in the depth chart? Question I've asked myself as well, but apparently I guess he's performing more in practice, or maybe he just has better grasp of the scheme, so they feel more comfortable with him. I don't know. Jeffrey Barton says, I don't think Tom Brady could win with this O-line. It takes time to learn a scheme. And hopefully that's what we're waiting on with this O-line for sure. Blasphemy here says, rotate to the strengths of each. Nico has a better arm. Henderson can run. This loss isn't the end of the world. It's the second game of year 1. We definitely didn't perform on offense, but the defense played with an edge. I think expectations need to be realistic. And that's what I'm trying to do in this episode. So that fits right in with my theme of this episode, right? Tempering expectations a little bit. That's mainly for myself because of how optimistic I was going into this thing. Nick Lafferty said, Nico, he said, Ohio sadly dominated the line of scrimmage. Nico knew he was going to take hits. Let Nico work through this with the line and build some trust and cohesiveness. That's a good take there, maybe. Plus, he's earned it. Jalen and Scotty should have packages ready to go for them, however. I agree on that point also. Super Mountaineer Brothers. If this O-line looks the way it did yesterday, it won't matter. There'll be no holes for a running back to run through, and a QB will have no time to make decisions. If they can get the line to be somewhat decent, then we'll have a better understanding of who's QB1 and who will take up the running back spot. And then Jason W says easily Scotty Fox and Bowser, or Scotty Fox and Bowers. He put Bowser there, probably a little typo, had me confused there for a second, but he said easily Scotty Fox and Sincere Bowers or Ty Edwards. So appreciate you guys sharing some of your thoughts there. And I want to talk a little bit about my opinion here on the QB position before we take a look at the stats. And then we'll put a bow on Ohio, take a look around the Big 12 and wrap up this recap episode here. Our Ohio review and reactions here, episode 226 of the CRW podcast. Appreciate you guys tuning in. But quarterback, right? Coming out of this game, it's definitely a concern. We definitely have issues there. And I think, I've heard some people put it that, Nico probably is the best arm, potentially. And Max Brown's been injured. I think maybe he has a case there, but with that hamstring injury, I don't know when and if we'll see him anytime soon. Nico probably has the best arm. Jalen, one of the best runners. So it's like you lose a little bit with each of those in. I think without the running back, though, we need a quarterback that can run. And also, if the O-line is going to, break down and guys are going to get in there, we need somebody that can get out, scramble away, still make plays. I think that would help us there. So that's a case for maybe a Jalen Henderson versus, the downside of Jalen we did see was the one play where Cam Vaughn got wide open and he missed the throw. If he puts that throw anywhere in bounds, it's probably a touchdown. Instead, it floated out of bounds while he was scrambling out. So that shows Nico didn't make the best passes of his own, but he is shown to be an accurate passer throughout his career prior to the game on Saturday for the majority of his playing time. So, I think he has the arm. Jalen Henderson definitely has the legs, which we could use in this offense. To me, the person that you would want to use is someone that has both of those. And who do we have on that roster that probably has both those? It's Scotty Fox, the true freshman, right? And I think you've heard a lot of people say, man, we need to play Scotty Fox more. And I think, especially if you're looking at a season, looking down the barrel of this thing where it could be a down year where you're just hoping to make a bowl game, maybe you kind of do want to plan for the future. And I normally would be 100% with that. And I think Scotty Fox is probably our best option. I think he's got the best future, and he's probably the future of the program at the position. But my issue with playing Scotty Fox is that the O-line is struggling so bad. You play him and just get him beat up, get him injured, then that harms him for his future, right? That harms him for the remainder of his career. So it's really a catch-22 with that situation right now, because is he potentially the best option because you need somebody that can throw it and run it? Probably. But also, as bad as your O-line is, do you want to risk him taking a ton of hits here in his freshman season, risk him getting injured as well after you already lost your best running back and one of your starting receivers due to injury? And plus, do you want to trot him out in a high intense rivalry game in the backyard brawl on 9/13 with all those storylines involved as a true freshman in that game? If so, man, you really got a lot of faith in that man. And I think West Virginia does, but I don't know if they'll do that. So to be honest, I would be surprised if Nico doesn't come back out there to start at least on Saturday. But I think we will be seeing a little bit more of Jalen Henderson involved, and maybe we will get to see Scotty Fox take some snaps. I think that this will be the game where we break out some stuff that maybe we haven't seen with some of those, running some of the running quarterback stuff, and we'll be utilizing those guys to do it, in my opinion. Although I think Nico probably will start again. Running back, that's a whole other issue. Like I talked about a little bit there. I'd be surprised if Clay Ash comes out there as a starting running back, but it could very well happen. I think if Cannon Katzer gets healthy, there's a chance he comes out there. Maybe you get Ty Edwards acclimated. I'm more anxious to see what happens there than quarterback because I'd say there's probably a 60+% chance it's Nico. I don't know what the chances are of who's going to be the starting running back. So definitely something we're keeping an eye on this week. And I appreciate you guys for answering the question I put out there on social media. So let's put a bow on this Ohio game. I know it's ugly, but we got to run through the stats real quick. Some quick talking points involved. West Virginia falls to 1-1. 17-10 loss to Ohio. Unfortunately remains winless at Ohio. Ohio beats West Virginia for the first time since 1949. 24 first downs for Ohio, 13 for West Virginia. Third down efficiency hurt us a ton in this game. One of the main reasons we lost, to me, not the main reason. I think the main reason I'll get to momentarily, but 2 of 13 on third downs, not good. Do hold them to 5 of 14. A few of their conversions were just Parker Navarro making a play. We even had a guy spying on him, and he would make him miss. There's where some of our missed tackles came in, was Navarro just being so slippery. And we were over 1 on 4th down. They were 1 of 3 on 4th down. Total yards, we're not getting it done with 250 total yards at all. 429 for Ohio. A lot of those coming in the first half, and a lot of the times they were putting drives together, but then we were ending it with a turnover, or they even missed a field goal at one point, I believe, right? So, they weren't coming away with points despite having some drives and, taking up time with their ball control offense. That's why they end up with a big total yardage advantage as well, as they had the ball for the majority of this game. Passing yardage, 247 for Ohio, only 178 for West Virginia. Ohio does throw 3 interceptions, as we talked about, 1 for the Mountaineers. 72 yards rushing. 2.6 yards per carry. Terrible. That's numbers we haven't seen since 2019, the first year of the Neil Brown era. And I think this offensive line is, unfortunately, probably the worst since then, and might end up being on par with that one if we don't see some improvements moving forward. It was that bad. 182 yards rushing for Ohio. Penalties, 8 for the Mountaineers, 10 for Ohio. Turnovers. To me, this was the big difference in the game, the main thing that cost West Virginia. They win the turnover battle. They're +2 in turnover margin. They force 3 turnovers. They only turn the ball over once. And all 3 of those turnovers, man, even I think a couple of them at least, we had good field position. Do you know what West Virginia did off those turnovers? Not only do they get no points off of turnovers, but they didn't get a single first down off of any one of those turnovers. And not only did they go 3 and out after each one of those turnovers, they went backwards. They didn't gain a yard. They had -7 yards on the 3 possessions after the 3 turnovers. That's awful, man. You got to capitalize on those opportunities when your defense is providing them. To me, that's where the game was lost right there. Your defense gave you so many chances. You were only down 7 through the majority of those, and you couldn't just put together the one drive to tie this game and at least get us to overtime and have us a chance to steal the game. It hurts. Time of possession, like we said, Ohio's strategy was to dominate that. 40 minutes versus only 16 for West Virginia, which doesn't add up to 60, so I don't know what's going on there. But that's also the downside of our up-tempo style. When we're not moving the ball on offense and we're just going 3 and out, defense was out there for a lot of the game. And that's why you also have to tip your cap to them, because they were out there for 40 minutes of 60 and still, forced 3 turnovers, held them to 17 points, and gave West Virginia chances in the second half. Lastly, individual stats. Quarterbacks, Nico 15 to 26, 178 and an interception, 27.4 quarterback rating. Not good. Henderson 0 of 2 on his 2 attempts. Rushing, Jaheim, the leading rusher, when he goes out early in the game and still is your leading rusher by the end, and no other running back is anywhere near that. Your next leading rushers are a receiver and 2 quarterbacks. That shows you got to have somebody step up at the running back position now moving forward. But while Jaheim was in there, the offensive line looked better. I think, maybe it's because his explosiveness, but, broke a 32-yard touchdown run that looked textbook Rich Rod offense, and he ended up with 6 carries, 40 yards, and a touchdown before he went down. Wish Jaheim White the best. 2 carries, 18 yards for Rodney Gallagher. Do you work him in some more carries now? 11 carries, 9 yards. Not going to get it done. That's what we're saying right there. I know some of those were sacks, which some sacks he could have threw the ball away. And also, I don't want to knock on Nico and make this just a Nico bash session, but I don't know if it's just because he's not confident he's able to get the yardage or what, or if they weren't reads and looked like reads. But to me, and we talked about this a little bit in the first game, and I thought it really reared its ugly head in this game even more. There were plenty of opportunities where Nico had to keep the ball on some of those reads and didn't. And if he did, it looked like he had a ton of grass. So I think that not only was he slow, missing some passes, but I think he missed some reads as well, which, doesn't help when your offensive line's playing bad. Jalen Henderson ends up with 3 carries, 4 yards, but man, he had a couple when he first got in there. It looks like he was going to break. One of them, just a shoestring tackle got him, and in the other one, he was in the open field with a guy, and it looked like if he made a miss, he could have maybe housed that thing or been a huge gain. Instead, he put the shoulder down and ran into him. That was a choice. I guess that's a hard edge choice by Jalen, but he did, get in there and make some plays on the ground when he was in there. But unfortunately only got the 1 series, maybe 2 at most. Clay Ash, 4 carries, 2 yards, not getting it done. He did have a good reception where he made a play on a 3rd down to set us up with a 4th down attempt. 1 carry, no yards for Cam Vaughn. And we talked about Sincere Bowers only getting the 1 carry that gave -1 yardage, but didn't stand a chance, was blown up in the backfield as soon as the ball touched his hands. Receiving, Jaden Bray was having a good day. Yet again, 4 catches, 69 yards before he went down. It looked like it to be another foot injury, potentially. You hate to hear that after, I believe that's what he suffered through last season. We'll see what happens with him moving forward. He was also carted off. 2 catches, 43 yards for Cam Vaughn. and, should have had more. That other one looked like a catch to me. That would have set us up first and goal. And I think Cam Vaughn's going to get plenty of opportunities. We need him to have, you know, at least 5 touches a game now moving forward as we lose some explosiveness on offense. 1 catch for 20 yards for Preston Fox, 4 for 20 for Clay Ash, who did have that nice 14-yarder. Rodney Gallagher with 1 catch, 12 yards. Man Singleton, 1 catch, 9 yards. A catch each for Grayson Barnes and Jaheim White. Defensively, Fred Perry leads us in total tackles with 10, has a sack, a TFL, and 2 pass deflections. Fred Perry is going to be all over the field this season, as we talked about a lot. He's going to be a dude. He's a real dude. Darren Lewis did have a couple penalties that hurt us at one point. Some of those holding and passing penalties they called on the defense I thought were a little bit questionable, but he bounced right back after one of them and had a great play where he jumped around and got one of our interceptions. Thought he was going to maybe pick 6 that thing. I couldn't quite make it happen, though, but, Darren Lewis did make a play in the game. KK Tarnu looked really good in this game. I don't know if he's going to be the starter over Israel Boyce moving forward, but I think there's an opportunity for that because I think he made some plays here. 8 tackles for him, 1 TFL and a pass deflection. Chase Wilson, 2 sacks, 2 TFLs and a pass deflection. Thought he was really good at times. Unfortunately, there were times he missed some tackles on Parker Navarro, but that was the case for a lot of our linebackers. I thought Chase Wilson was solid as I expected him to be. Ben Bogle. So finally got some action from Ben Bogle in this one. Unfortunately, Reed Carrico goes down, so we get to see more of him. But I thought he looked good in the action that we saw him have. 6 tackles for him. Ben Cutter also at the linebacker position, 6 tackles, half a TFL and a pass deflection. And that's, about it. Get half a TFL from Eddie Kelly. That's kind of the standout ones on the defensive side. No players of the game after losses, so that'll wrap us up on stats and I guess put a bow on a 17-10 loss for West Virginia, unfortunately, against Ohio. So now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look around the Big 12, do a quick rundown of the Week 2 scores around the conference before we put a bow on the entire episode here on episode 226. But before I do, just want to say I appreciate you guys tuning into this one any way you choose to do so. Those that watch here on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, help us out with that crazy YouTube algorithm. Help us find more Mountaineer football fans like yourself. And if you're one of those that hasn't yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button, get these videos directly into your feed. Ton of content coming at you throughout football season, a preview podcast for each game, a review podcast for each game, and of course a live stream each week as well where you get to share your predictions for the game. That'll be coming up on Thursday or Friday this week. Be on the lookout for that. Of course, we'll have our Backyard Brawl preview episode dropping before then. So plenty of content coming at you if you are on the YouTube side. We appreciate you for being a viewer here. But if you listen on the audio side, we enjoy that as well and appreciate you guys that tune in that way. If you are, leave us a rating on any podcast platform that you're tuning in on there. You can find us on any one of those, and we appreciate those interactions. And shout out to our friends over at WVSportsNow.com for hosting our episodes on their website as well. So with that being said, let's take a look at the Round the Big 12 here, our final segment as we wrap up episode 226 of the CRW podcast. So I guess another silver lining for the Mountaineers is we looked bad on Saturday, but we didn't have the worst performance in the Big 12 by a long shot. I think there were at least a couple others that we could probably give that honor to. Texas Tech, 62-14 win. You expected that. Kent State's been a bad team. They continue to be a bad team. And Texas Tech looks like they could potentially be a really good team. So 62-14 win for Texas Tech. Another drubbing. Baylor bounces back. I thought that they might bounce back. They get a win over a ranked team. Defense still doesn't look the best for Baylor, but they find a way. They definitely have the offense. Jake Spavital calling the thing, doing a great job. Sawyer Robertson put up, I think it was over 400 yards, I believe. Double overtime win, 48-45 over SMU. Iowa State gets it done. The Cyclones looking really tough this year. Get the win in Ames over the Hawkeyes there in the Cy-Hawk rivalry there, 16-13. The typical score you would expect there, Iowa State with a game-winning field goal to get it done. And Rocco Becht, Iowa State, Matt Campbell, they're going to threaten the conference this year. Which leads us to one of the teams that had a worse day than West Virginia by far, and that's the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Mike Gundy, had been talked about being on the hot seat already. This was kind of a year where they were hoping he would come back, turn things around, use the portal a little bit more, get used to the new era a little bit more. And I think it sucks that Hoss Haney went down for him because he looked like he could be a weapon this season. But man, then they get into the back and forth that he did with the coach at Oregon this week. That's a bad look for Mike Gundy because then you pissed off Oregon and they came out and drubbed you 69-3, a 66-point loss. That's bad. That's bad. I don't know what's going to happen there in Stillwater, but some stuff's going to change either throughout this season or after this season, I would suspect. Kansas and Missouri, man, thought Kansas would come out there and get a win. They had a lead for a good portion of this game, but then at the end, their defense kind of collapses, and Missouri ends up pulling away for the 42-31 win. I think that there are some teams in the Big 12 that have bad defenses, but can we capitalize with as bad as our offense has been? I don't know. And we're going to need Zach Alley's defense to carry us in some of these games, and I think they will. But, man, I don't know. It's going to be a meeting of the terribles, right? I don't know how else to coin that when some of these bad defenses play West Virginia what looks to be a bad offense to this point, unless West Virginia's offensive line improves. Colorado with a 31-7 win over Delaware as expected. Cincinnati handles Bowling Green 34-20. We talked about the Mountaineers. 63-9 Utah over Cal Poly. Army beats Kansas 24-21. Excuse me, Kansas State 24-21. The Wildcats big time struggles this year. They're literally a late touchdown in the last minute away from being 0-3. Nearly being upset by an FCS squad last week. Then they let Army come back and defeat them in this game 24-21. And Kansas State all of a sudden is 1-2, a team that we thought would be a competitor for the conference this year. They got to get some things turned around there at Kansas State. Houston looks like they might be the surprise team in the conference this year to me. Maybe a dark horse contender. Excellent defense continues. They hold Rice to 9 points. They put up 35-9 win for Houston. And they might have one of the better defenses in the conference. They're right up there with BYU and some others, I think. UCF 68-7 win over North Carolina A&T. Arizona State, man. Oh, this one hurt. Got a chance to watch the last little bit of this one. Thought they had this game won. They put together an amazing drive, run out pretty much all of the clock. There's less than a minute left. They kick a field goal to go up 20-17. Mississippi State has no timeouts, I believe, right? Arizona State, lets them. Why were they man-to-man with no safety help at this point in the game when Mississippi State has got to get in field goal range? They're going to be taking shots down the field. They leave their speed guy one-on-one, deep post route, deep over route, whatever you want to call it. Touchdown. Mississippi State wins at 24-20. Man, Arizona State had it in their pocket. Instead, big win for the SEC over what was a high-ranked Big 12 team. And then Arizona 48-3 over Weber State, and BYU 27-3 over Stanford. Like we said, BYU, excellent defense as well. And those are the scores from around the Big 12 here. Following week 2, next week in our review episodes, we'll start going over Big 12 conference standings probably in our Around the Big 12 segment on these review episodes. And, of course, our Around the Big 12 segment on our preview episodes. We'll predict those week 3 games and make some picks for those. Coming up this week is it's Brawl Week, baby. I know we're down right now. I know we don't have the best feeling about the game, best feeling about a lot of things going on with the team, with the injuries, with the bad performance by the O-line, with the questions at quarterback. A lot of things you can point to. But guess what? No matter what, one thing we all know, we all hate Pitt. We all hate Pitt, baby. And it's Backyard Brawl Week. We're going to get up there. We're going to enjoy this game. I don't care how mad you are at the team. If you got tickets, go out there. Let's make this environment raucous. Let's still make this thing crazy for this Backyard Brawl, because no matter what, it's a rivalry game. The best team doesn't always win in these rivalry games. Whoever's supposed to win on paper doesn't always win in these rivalry games. And we know that. So let's get excited. Let's get hyped. Let's get ready for rivalry week here as we get set to take on Pitt this upcoming week in the Backyard Brawl. We'll have our preview out for that later this week, so be on the lookout for that. But before that, let's put a bow on this one here. Episode 226. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, want to share some thoughts there in the comment section on West Virginia's game against Ohio or the season moving forward, we'd appreciate those interactions as we continue to try and grow the CRW community throughout Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those